Well, we're back. We left off with Chapter 6 of Inside Out. So Chapter 7 is up today. A lot has been happening. We've seen a few new things around the farm that I suppose I'll get to later. Little things, subtle things that I didn't even find them. Other people found them and pointed them out to me. So that is continuing stuff. So here we'll go with Chapter 7 out of Inside Out. This one is called Lightning Strikes. This is where I encounter the third in the trio of unknowns. Starts out like this. My relationship with some of my fraternity brothers was a bit awkward for a while after the Dean of Men episode, but no harm, no foul. They got over it pretty quickly because they had other things to think about. Vietnam was still a very hot war, and so the day for the military draft lottery arrived, December 1, 1969. Those whose birth dates drew really high numbers cheered and left the television room in the frat house basement for the bars of Aggie Town to celebrate. Of those who drew low numbers, like me, I was number 54 out of 365. Not good. They headed for the bars in Aggie Town to drown their sorrows. Some joined ROTC to try to earn a Jeep instead of a foxhole. Who could blame them? I determined to make grades, keep my 2S deferment forever, and endure the siege. Back in high school, my parents had bought me a Hagstrom electric guitar and a little Fender amplifier, and then didn't like my new friends. My garage band playlist had acquainted me with protest songs, namely Dylan, and plenty of hippie culture, namely Jimmy. Once in college, I soon found myself emulating those young people I had seen on the news at Woodstock the previous year. There weren't a lot of hippies at Kansas State. There was no instruction manual. We made it up as we went, and we tried our best. When the Kent State Massacre occurred in May of 1970, we marched on campus instead of going to class. My ROTC fraternity brothers, ROTC because of low draft numbers, scowled at us. We said, "See you after the march," and they said, "I'll see you in my sights." That is a quote, but they probably didn't mean it. However, there were plenty of lever-action 30-30s hanging in the back windows of pickup trucks back then, so who knew? Those were very divisive times, kind of like now. In the summer of 1970, I spent a lot of time at the cabin. One afternoon, while stone cold sober, I suddenly became filled with an unnamed dread I could not explain. I thought maybe the place had become haunted or something. I could not stay there even though it was daylight. I had only felt that kind of dread once before, years earlier, camping in the woods above the Mill Creek bottoms. I grabbed my stuff, got in my car, and went straight home. The next day, and all the days after, everything was normal. As of this writing, the feeling has never returned. I forgot about it, but never completely, until I began to put this puzzle together a few years ago. All the above was fresh in the back of my mind when, in the fall of 1970, I next encountered a mysterious unknown. I was walking through the Union at Kansas State when I saw Gary, one of my classmates. We were on the K-State Entertainment Committee together. We brought in groups like Three Dog Night, the Association, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. What I mean is, the committee brought them in, and as a sophomore, I was there too. I usually served as security at some low-traffic doorway, but I got to see the concerts for free, and I once brought Jennifer Warnes a chocolate milkshake per her request from the student union before she became famous. Anyway, As I greeted my friend Gary that day, I noticed a large blue button on his shirt. It was rather garish, I thought. It had a multi-pointed star, turned out to be 9 points, emblazoned with a single word that I could not pronounce because I had never seen so many hyphens and accent marks on such a short word in my life. The marks turned out to be Persian diacritics. The word was Baha'i. I asked him, "What does that say?" He told me, and so I first heard the name that, as it turned out, would guide me through the rest of my life. Beyond that, it was a day like any other. He said they held informal meetings called firesides at the student union on Wednesday evenings, and I should come because medics from Fort Riley, guys back from Vietnam, often gave the firesides where I could get my questions answered. "Are Baha'is conscientious objectors?" I asked, hopefully. "Sort of," was Gary's reply, and that was good enough for me. "I will be there Wednesday," I said. Gary was a virtual fountain of misinformation. As fate preferred, that was exactly what I needed to hear to get me there. And so I attended my first Baha'i fireside at Kansas State. I asked them, "Do you guys have like a headquarters someplace?" And the medic said, "Yeah, it's in Wilmette, Illinois." This intersection with a relatively tiny, little-known mystical Eastern faith, this collision at the crossroads, might still have happened for me at Knox College or in a rice paddy or some other equally unlikely place. Who knows? But that it happened at a conservative cow college fully within the Bible Belt on the edge of the Great Plains seems almost inexplicable. What are the chances? 100%, it seems. That is how these things happen. I continued to attend and listen on Wednesday nights while hippieing it up on the weekends. This went on until March 1, 1971. Someone was talking about the early believers in this faith. He called them the Dawnbreakers. I thought that was a good name for a band. Anyway, their story touched my heart somehow, and when he finished, I said, "Well, I'll be a Baha'i." There was a momentary silence, and then the room exploded with excitement. I was hugged and hugged and hugged more. I was presented with several texts, which they said I should read, and then they all left. Turns out they all lived many miles away in several directions. Some were from KU, some from Fort Riley, etc. They also said, "You need to fast from sunrise to sunset starting tomorrow, and the fast ends in 19 days. You got to think that's funny. So anyway, I walked back to Sigma Nu that night, a Baha'i. Now all I had to do was find out what that was. Also, there was one more thing that I found really impressive at that time, and I don't remember whether it occurred before or after my declaration. Either way, one of my fraternity brothers by the last name of Knapp, no, it was not George, was dating a Baha'i. Now stop and think. I belong to a small, hard-drinking animal house of a fraternity. There are almost no Baha'is living in Manhattan, Kansas back then. What are the odds, really? So he takes me with him to visit her. She suggests we say prayers. We all do. However many of us that were present. I think there were 5 or 6 people at her apartment. When it is her turn, she begins to recite a tablet from memory. It seemingly to me went on and on and on. I was mesmerized. I was so impressed by what she was doing. When she finally finished, I asked her, "What was that?" And she replied, "The Tablet of Ahmad. It is very powerful." Well, heck, I guess. I was so impressed that I decided to learn it by heart myself. I began to practice on my drives back to Illinois to visit my future bride, Barbara. I would go up to my room as soon as I got home and recite it aloud. I probably did so when I was out and about, seemingly by myself, on the farm or at the cabin. Once I memorized it, I never quit reciting it. There is even a part of the tablet that says, "Withhold not thyself therefrom." So I never have. I had no clue that back then, when I was walking alone in the woods and fields on the farm, or duck hunting along the Mississippi, or goose hunting at Swan Lake, or in the Grand River bottoms near Chillicothe, Missouri, that I might not have been alone. Somebody was listening. And they would show me much later that they were paying attention, that they understood. P.S. Regarding Baha'i, right here, I could share lots of information that explains what that was. But this story isn't about that. My declared agenda, as published in the MUFON Journal, is to make ufology aware that the writings of my research exist. That's it. We are talking about high strangeness in this book, writings that may offer significant, relevant insight regarding those topics, and how I somehow became entangled with them, both from an early age. We will get to those relevant writings in a while, and then, when you see how relevant they are, you, like MUFON, will know that you can trust me to not get off topic. I will only sneak in the bare minimum of Baha'i teachings necessary to have my story make sense. And as the story progresses from here, I will include what happened to me and what I did as a Baha'i, because that paints the portrait of my response to this particular spiritual unknown, without preaching to anyone about the beliefs they may not be interested in. Also, my Baha'i experiences over the past half-century should inform and reassure any Baha'is reading this book that I take these topics seriously, as I encourage them to investigate the efforts of ufology as it encounters and uncovers the unknown, and to research the writings themselves for greater insight into these topics. I hopefully won't be taken for granted. Likewise, it explains what filled my time and shaped my vision on the way to my own evolving understanding. Without that little library on the mountainside, I would not have anything momentous to share with you or with them, as you will see. My subsequent actions and the risks involved showed the depth of my response to my almost casual declaration of faith after only a handful of fireside question and answer format gatherings on the second floor of the Student Union over a period of just a couple months, January and February. Nothing fancy. Some of the Baha'is I knew from that group are not Baha'is now. The response of each soul to the unknown is unique. But as we review our species' early known history and, and witness the archaeological emergence of lost civilizations, thanks to new technology and pioneering investigative reporters like Graham Hancock, faith seems to play a role, does it not? Many, if not all, ancient groups seem concerned with the physical plane of existence as a preparation for a more expansive life to come. By that I mean, on December 5, 2023, I watched Graham Hancock on YouTube describing ancient cultures that were hemispheres apart, and despite that, they each view the Milky Way as the pathway of the souls. There is a spiritual link of some sort to high strangeness and lost civilizations. My story shows that this link continues to the present via the writings of my research and the very real responses to those writings that have been presented to me literally in my own backyard. But you will be the judge of that for you. So where were we? And that brings us to Chapter 8, which we'll do next time. Thanks for being here. In the meantime, I may read some different stuff. I've got an article I sent off to MUFON, and I may read that to you in full before they publish it. See you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.